My name is Ramona Prasad, and I'm a documentary filmmaker and writer. With me today is Vicky Krug, and you all know Vicky because Vicky was featured in the documentary Gray Matters, Teaching the Way the Brain Learns. At the time we filmed, Vicky was assistant professor at Westmoreland County Community College, and she is now associate professor. Things, of course, are very different. We're in the time of pandemic schooling and crisis schooling and whatever we want to call it. Vicky, tell us how you are using your background in brain-targeted teaching to help you through these times.
One of the big things with brain-targeted teaching that stood out for me, well, a couple things. Always, always, always emotional climate. And so this is a crazy time for all of us. And, I'm still learning as I go. Things shift day to day, if not hour to hour. But if I keep my emotions in check and I come through with a sense of confidence, with a sense of directedness, with a sense of reassurance, the students are going to pick up on that. And they follow. So that's a big thing. And knowing that I care and that I'm going to help them through it. That's a big thing. The other thing was, and this, it goes beyond brain targeted teaching. It's something that hopefully we're learning in teacher education programs, but brain targeted teaching certainly emphasized it, was to differentiate instruction, to meet the students where they are. And so I was already using Zoom with students intermittently here and there before the pandemic happened, because some students needed a little additional help, or maybe they were in a what we called video conference classroom, but they were afraid to speak up because now they had all these other students around them. So I was already doing Zoom with students here and there, but it wasn't Zoom. It wasn't called Zoom. We used a different resource. So for me now, I'm just doing Zoom on a much larger scale. But I'm still differentiating, again, just on a much, much larger scale. And it's a lot of work. We're all going through it. It's a lot of work. But once we get it to where I have the resources in place, I feel like I'll be in a much better place than I was prior to.
Now, I know you're working with adult learners, and of course, adult learners are very different than, let's say, a K-12 scenario and a K-12 teacher. But what would you, having been a veteran of teaching for, quite a few years, what would you suggest for K-12 teachers? What are your thoughts?
Wow. They're my heroes. In truth, they're my heroes. I don't know how they do it. My biggest piece of advice to them is reach out to one another. Use resources that you have. Reach out for help. Get help, and go easy on yourselves, because you're really making a difference with these kiddos, even if they may not feel like, oh, they're reaching all of the outcomes that are expected of them, or every single assignment that's expected of them. They may not be able to keep with the teaching guide, but the fact that they're letting students know that they care and they're making a difference in these kids' lives, that makes all the difference. I see the outcomes of students who've had wonderful experiences in school, and I've seen the outcomes of kids who've not had great experiences in school. And it's really striking to me how one incident can really stand out in these adult learners' minds. They'll tell me stories of, I had this English teacher once who told me I'd never amount to anything, or I had this English teacher once who told me, don't ever give up because you're a great writer. So it's those one time. So the things that we say, the things that we do, our gestures are so powerful, especially K-12 educators. They're at an age when kids are so malleable and able to take in messages, even much more so than whenever I get them. I have to undo a lot of stuff. So not necessarily from teachers, but from life.
Now, one of the things that we talked about a lot in the documentary were your choices in assessing students. What are you doing differently, if anything, with assessments in the age of, you know, COVID and distance learning, et cetera?
That's a great question. We were given 2 days to prepare when this all happened. So yeah, and it wasn't our administration's fault. It's just the way things happened, you know. But so for me to have the time to enter all electronically every assessment into, you know, electronic, I just didn't have the time. There was no way across 4 disciplines, you know, in all the classes. So I said to students, we're not testing except the tests that were the common assignments across the department, which we have to do for data and, you know, and auditing and things like that. Beyond that, I did no testing. But what I did was tell the students, I'm going to create study guides with the major concepts of lessons that we've discussed in class. And I would have them complete a study guide. And they had to fill it out, basically show me that they understood the concepts that I put on the study guide. That was one thing I did. Another thing I did, I had them do presentations where they had to develop the rubric. We developed the rubric together in class, you know, using the outcomes of the course. And then I said, you guys are going to present on a different chapter or a different concept from the class. I had them do a lot of writing, you know, and assessing writing. And then I had rubrics for that, so they knew the expectations. It's tougher for K-12 teachers because they do have so many outside stakeholders telling them what they have to teach. That's hitting us too, but not at the same level for K-12. You know, it's a whole different story for them. But basically alternate types of assessments that I could still show these kids have met mastery for this objective, this objective, this objective, not necessarily a multiple choice test.
And so, Vicky, in terms of teacher efficacy and feeling like you're meeting your students' needs amidst all of these, you know, factors that are completely out of your control, how are you doing that? How are you handling that?
Well, when you use the word efficacy, I have to smile because you know, I don't know that we've ever come to a really reasonable and accurate definition of what we mean by efficacy in terms of teacher efficacy. Because how do we measure every teacher in the same way when we're all teaching different things, different kids? So it's a really, really tough call. But what most teachers have to think about, because their jobs are at stake, are student performance and student grades. And so is that necessarily effectiveness? That could be up for debate because we could always, you know, so it's sort of twofold. How do I meet that, a standard that an administrator wants from me, and beyond the administration, auditors, stakeholders, people like that, and making sure that students are achieving a certain grade, a certain mastery on high stakes testing. So I have to teach to that. I do. And that's unfortunate because that's not what the vast majority of teachers I know wish to do, is to teach to a test. You know, and so sadly that is a piece of what we end up having to do, myself included. But the part where I can sleep every night and I can go home and live with myself every day, so or I feel effective, is I want to make sure that I'm connecting with students, that I'm meeting the needs that they have, not have they mastered a true, false, yes or no multiple choice test, but do they feel connected? Do they have a desire to learn? Are they passionate about learning? Do they have enough food? I mean, it's that basic sometimes, a lot of the time. You know, are they in a safe place in their house? You know, those are the things that matter to me and to so many teachers. You know, are we making a difference in our students' lives? So.
Now, it's a tough year, and I think everybody knows that. So what are you setting for yourself as far as goals? I think we all was going to a school year looking at things we want to accomplish. And, you know, do you have that same sense this year?
Well, and I hate to say this, but I feel I've had to really pare down. I've really revisited the course outcomes and the course objectives, and have had to really narrow and focus in on those, because I spend so much time on making sure they know how to log on to Zoom, that they have, there's so many other things that are taking time that I just don't reasonably have the time to talk about, or to get into mindset, or to get into some of the brain stuff that I normally get into. I still do, but I've had to really narrow the 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 scope of what I would get into if I were actually in a classroom. And that's unfortunate. It is really unfortunate. But I've also given myself a break that, if I make a difference, if I keep these kids in the class, well, I call them kids, they're adults, but if I get them through and keep them involved and they've met course outcomes and objectives, maybe it'll be a little easier on myself that I'm doing more than I recognize. And I can say that for so many teachers. We're so hard on ourselves, and we make a bigger difference, I think, than we even begin to recognize.
Vicky, I want to say thanks for your time, and I want to wish you all the best for
Me
this school
too.
year. We'll see you on the other side,
Okay.
non-pandemic schooling.
Okay.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you.